Welcome to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food is Medicine, and naturally a health, wellness, and mindfulness enthusiast. I believe that happiness is a choice, and I built my company upon this ethos. This show is a platform where we will discuss all things health, wellness, and mindfulness in hopes of inspiring you further on your journey. We will be sharing inspiring stories, health, wellness, and mindfulness hacks, as well as anything else pertaining to living your best choice life. My hope is that you may hear something on every episode of this podcast that will genuinely be of value in your life. Welcome back to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, also author of Plant Food is Medicine, a cookbook with over 100 gluten-free and plant-based recipes. Some of our choice favorites are actually in there. This episode, as well as every other episode, is sponsored by Choice Juicery. If you want to support this show, you can do so by visiting us online at choicejuicery.com, where we're shipping a lot of our products. We are shipping our gluten-free bread now. It is one of the best breads on the market, full of nutrition, but it's gluten-free, it's plant-based, and it tastes amazing. Don't just take it from me. We have some amazing reviews online, so check those out. Also shipping Power Greens. It's a daily green powder. It has all your daily greens, but also prebiotics and protein in there. It's pretty incredible. It's got this amazing neutral flavor, so you can really add it to anything or have it on its own. We also ship our complete protein. Our protein is filled with superfoods, so superfood protein. And we are shipping our elixir line. We're shipping our nut butters. If you haven't had our cake batter almond butter, oh my gosh, you got to get yourself some of that. So yeah, lots of products. My cookbook is also available on there as well. Another way you can support this show is also by visiting us in San Diego or Orange County. If you're lucky enough to live nearby, you can visit any of our 7 locations. We'd love to see you in there, and we'd love your support online as well. Today's guests actually used to be regulars of ours in our Solana Beach location way back when I initially first opened that store. Jairek Robbins and his lovely wife, Amanda Robbins. Jarek's the son of Tony Robbins. You've probably heard that name before. And he is also made quite a name for himself. He is a world-renowned performance coach, and so is his wife. They actually co-founded Performance Coach University. Jairek is a English author. He wrote a book called Live It, and I'm reading that book right now. And it's all about this idea of achieving success through living with purpose. And I'm loving the book. Excited to chat with him about that. Overall, I think I'm most excited to chat with them as a couple. They seem to have figured out the recipe to success when it comes to relationships. I just have a lot of admiration for them. I mean, truly a power couple, working together, growing together, building a family and a life together. They truly look like they've got it all figured out. And I'm excited to dive in and talk to them and figure out, what their secret to success is, both in relationship, but also in life and business and raising a family. So yeah, let's get them on. Welcome, Jairek and Amanda. Thank you so much for being with me today on the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. It's so exciting to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's good to be here.
Yeah, this is my first interview with 2 people. So I'm super excited. You guys, to me, are a power couple. You make it look easy doing it all, running a business, raising a family. You moved abroad. I'm so excited. I haven't seen you guys in quite a few years. Used to shop at the Choice Solana Beach location, and I always love dropping in with you guys. It's been a while. First and foremost, you guys up and moved out of the country. So I want to hear a little bit about that, if you don't mind sharing. What took you to Puerto Rico, and how's life over there?
Jairek has a really great story on this, but before we dive into it, I just want to say that I really miss your place. I miss Choice Juicery. I miss Solana Beach. So it definitely holds a special place in my heart. And I do look forward to going back. But yeah, we've picked up and relocated to Puerto Rico, which is so beautiful and very naturally minded and focused. And it's a very healthy and natural way of living. It's really beautiful. It's really feels like you went back in time, and relationships matter and people slow down, and it's not about just working. It's really about living. And so, yeah, but Jairek will talk, I think, about how it's a really beautiful story about what brought us here, actually.
I love that. I can't wait to hear it. Before he jumps in, I just have to say one of the recipes on my menu at Choice was inspired by a smoothie that I had in Puerto Rico at Rincon. There was
No
like this
way.
little juice truck when I was visiting. I was surfing there on my 30th birthday. And I was surfing at Rincon, and there was this little juice stand, and there was a smoothie. I can't remember the name of it, but it was this creamy tropical smoothie. And so when I went home, I had to recreate that smoothie. I missed it. And it's the orange dreamsicle now on the Choice Juicery menu. So love Puerto Rico. Part of Choice is inspired by it. So great choice. All right, Jairek, let's hear this
Brilliant.
amazing story.
How fun. Well, the story starts with Amanda was pregnant and we were living in Miami Beach in Florida. And I thought just, a woman's body 3D printing a human 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 9, 10, 12 months, that process, it has enough natural stress put on it by itself. And so my thought was, why don't we offset that with the environment instead of living in an environment that's chaotic and stressful and even more chaos around a human body that's working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at that capacity? Why don't we relocate and find a space where it's calming and rejuvenating and relaxing? And then the other part was, I remember we were traveling through San Francisco, and a friend of ours we were asking, what's it like here with kids and parents? And she's like, it's interesting. Like, she took her daughter out to a cafe, and little kids do what kids do. She whined a little and was upset about something and screamed over something. And this lady turned around, this like middle-aged woman who was just angry at life, and was like, why would you bring a kid here? What's wrong with you? Can't you respect our space? And I was like, wow, I'd never want my wife being in an environment like that, where
Yeah.
people don't look at kids as kids and
Yeah.
don't honor that or value that in any way. And so my thought was like, where do they value family? Where do they value? We have a friend who lives in Costa Rica, and she told us, they value pregnant women here. When she was pregnant in Costa Rica, she was at the grocery store and she grabbed the basket, filled it up, walked to the back of the line, and was happily, patiently waiting. And a little old woman saw her and was like, no, 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 no. And came and grabbed her arm and like pushed everyone out of the line and pushed her to the front and said, hey, she has a baby, move. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, they value pregnant women. They value family. They value children. Like, I'd love to be in an environment where those are true. And so I thought about that, and we were thinking of Costa Rica just because we had lived there for a few months, I think a few years earlier. And we thought about it. And then a friend told me the west side of Puerto Rico, specifically in Rincon, was kind of like Costa Rica, except for you're still in a U.S. territory. So we have the U.S. post office here. We have FedEx and UPS, and the USPS truck drives by. It looks out of place because it
Yeah.
does feel like you're in Central or South America.
Yeah.
And then like USPS cruises by, you're like, oh yeah, they're still here. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, where
Wow.
it's a territory, little different. We don't get to vote in the presidential election, but we still have space in Congress and stuff like that. But it's a territory. It feels very Central South America. People value families. They value children. They value mothers. So much so that when COVID happened, I teased Amanda and called her my VIP card, because we could go to the store and when everyone's waiting in line, I'd be like, she's pregnant. And they'd be like, oh, come on up. And I'm like, yes.
That's
And then
amazing.
it eventually worked against me, though, where I remember we went to Sam's Club and she was pregnant. We were standing in line and the security guard came over and said, ma'am, you're not allowed in the store for your safety. You have to go wait in the car. He can wait in line. I was like, oh, now my VIP card's
Oh
working
my
against
gosh,
me.
that is
Um,
amazing.
but it was that thought process. The part about it, though, is they care. They pay attention to it. They watch for it. I remember one of our neighbors, we go on a walk every day, and our Spanish wasn't very good yet. We were still brand new here and just learning Spanish, learning our way. But one of our neighbors, they're a little old couple who has a house down the road. And we walked by every morning and they'd wave and they'd rub their belly and ask, in Spanish, how's the baby? How are you doing? And I remember exactly on the day 1 year after Ko was born, our son, she was like, wait. And she ran inside and she came running out with a little birthday present for him. I was like, how sweet. It's like a person we speak broken Spanish to every day when we walk by and wave hi. And literally on the day, she had a present prepared to come run and give him a little present for his
Wow.
birthday, which he loved that thing.
Wow.
And it was so refreshing and neat to be in that environment. Since he's grown up here for the last few years, he doesn't wear shoes often.
I
So when
love
we
that.
go back to the mainland, we have to talk to him about the importance of wearing shoes. When he has to go to the bathroom, he usually just yells, "I gotta go," and pulls down his pants and aims and
Yeah.
fires, which we also had to explain. You can't just do that anywhere in the
Yep.
mainland USA.
Yep.
We do need to find a bathroom. And so there's little things that he's growing up with that I think are wholesome and beautiful.
So
And it's
wild and
keeping him
free.
grounded and connected and giving him a wonderful little start to life.
That is beautiful. On a small scale, I relate. I moved to Vista from Carlsbad, which is not far, but I'm on an acre and I'm like, we're just, we have like farm animals and I'm growing a bunch of food. And my little one just runs around like a wild woman around the property, like catching lizards and barefooted. And same thing, like, if she wanted to go pee, she'd go pee anywhere. And when we're other places, yeah, that transition of like, hey, no, that's just on our property. That's not at the grocery store. So yeah, I relate to that, but I think that's beautiful. And Puerto Rico is such a beautiful place. I was actually thinking about that. I was like, wait, it is a U.S. territory. So I was like, I want to send them like a choice goodie bag with some of our products that we're shipping now. And I was like, can I ship it? Because I was like, I think I can, but now that I know that the U.S. Post Office is there, I should be able to, right? Because we ship
Definitely.
through USPS our bread and our elixir lines and our nut butters and stuff like that. So I'll have to send you guys a goodie bag. I'll follow up and get your guys' info.
Amazing.
Give you a little taste of choice. But that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. And what a beautiful reason. I would have never guessed that was the reason. What a beautiful reason. What a beautiful, supportive husband and just family in general to be like, hey, this change of life is coming and where's the best place to do this at, and to have that zoomed out approach. I love it. I'm reading your book right now, the Live It book. And, it's kind of that idea of like finding success through purpose, like having a purpose. And I just think that kind of speaks to that, like, what are we doing here? What is our goal? What's our purpose? Okay, where do we need to go to accomplish that? And that's pretty much a testimony of that. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing, and to hear how well it's going for you guys and how happy you are there. It's really amazing. So as a couple, I don't know your story, how you met, and I want to be mindful of time, but I want to hear a little tidbit of how you guys met. Let's rewind a little bit since we jumped ahead to moving to Puerto Rico. How did you guys meet to begin with? And then you guys have this beautiful relationship I admire, and I want to know, what are the secrets to success there?
This is so fun. So it's been 12 years now that since we've met, and it's our 10th year of being married, which has been incredible. Gosh, it's been such a fun ride. How we met was actually in San Diego. And yeah, Jairek again tells the story really well. Do you want to tell it, or you want me to share the what's allowed us to have an amazing relationship for 10 years?
I mean, the real story, or
Yeah. So one thing that's
I
funny
was
is like
on my third shift. No, I'm just kidding.
every time someone asks us this question, we always make up like some really crazy story.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
yeah, because it's actually the most like, I guess nowadays it's one of the most unheard of ways to meet. So maybe even if we told the real story,
Yeah.
people wouldn't believe us. But we actually just met through friends in San Diego.
I love
And
it.
a college friend of mine is married to my college friend, and his wife live next door to Jairek, and we both reluctantly went to a pre-4th of July party. I actually had stopped drinking. San Diego, of course, it's like the
Yeah.
pre,
Yeah.
the post, the
Yes.
during, and the post party. And
Uh-huh.
so,
Uh-huh.
I had actually stopped drinking, I don't know, sometime before, like a month or so before. And I really was like, I don't need to go to this party. And it also was later in the day. I'm like, it's going to be a mess there. But I really had missed these friends. I hadn't seen them in a while. And I was also very reluctant because actually I'm so grateful for them now that they did match us up. But I was kind of in this space where I was not looking for anyone. I was working on my MBA. I was volunteering with Make-A-Wish. I was playing volleyball, and I was working full time. Like, there wasn't room in the schedule for like a love life, right? And I am not one to like, I want something meaningful. I didn't want, some whatever, just
Yes.
not meaningful relationship. And so I ended up going over, and then Jarek, so as soon as I got there, I'm like, I'm not wanting to be hooked up, but our friend Molly loved to like she's like, I got to introduce you to someone. Apparently she thought I was
Matchmaker.
such a cat. And so she's actually really good at that. And so I show up, and as soon as I get there, I'm like, Molly, so good to see you. I didn't see Scott, my friend from college at that time. Molly, so good to see you. And she goes, I'm so glad you're here. Put a smile on their face. There's someone I need to introduce you to. And I was like, no, this isn't what I wanted. But also, I do love meeting people. So it wasn't like I'm not running in the opposite direction. I'm like, okay, like, it just was not my intention. Like, if you can picture the scene, it was on a rooftop in Mission Bay with a DJ and people just like chugging whatever fits or whatever, like just throwing back drinks. And I'm like, he's not here. And now I will never tell anyone that they're not where you might like. He was in the last place I thought I'd meet him, truthfully, but it all makes perfect sense and was divine timing now, because he also didn't want to go over. But Molly had begged him to come over, and
I'll give you my side of the story.
Yes, let's hear this.
We shared an alleyway. So I lived on the second floor of this building, and they lived on the third floor. And from their rooftop, they could see down into my balcony. And I was always in my office working, and I'd leave the door open just for the breeze and stuff like that. And so they were up on the roof staring down into my office, and she was yelling. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Working." She's like, "Come over." I was like, "That's okay." She's like, "No, seriously, come over." I'm like, "I'm good." She's like, "I'm going to come get you." I was like, "Please don't." And so we were just bickering and laughing back and forth. But rewind, just to set kind of the interesting dynamic there, I too didn't think that's where my wife would be. Molly ran a promotional company for a beer and spirits company. And so I always had a joke, because 3 or 4 times a day I'd hear her garage door going up and down, and I'd always just kind of lean and see what's going on. And there'd always be a half-dressed woman putting boxes in the trunk of a car and driving away. And I'd text them. I'm like, "Do you print women in your garage? Like, why is there always a girl wearing half near nothing coming out of your garage with boxes?" And she's like, "It's just the girls grabbing some promo gear."
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even know what that means. It just seemed odd. I was like, y'all have something weird going on over there. And so, all the girlfriends and everything, very pretty people, guys and girls, all good looking. But it's more of like a raging pre-party on the roof with the DJ and everything. And they were getting it turned on. And she's like, "Come over." I was like, "No, thanks."
Nope.
So she literally did come over to my house, and she was like, "You're coming over. Stand up. Let's go."
Wow.
And she grabbed my arm and pulled me out the front door. And I grabbed a protein shake on the way out, because I don't drink, and people would have been like, "Oh, you want something?" I was like, "No, thanks, I'm good." I met the guy who started BarkBox there, which I thought was pretty cool. I was talking to him for a while, and it was at the time where he was still mass ordering dog treats and toys and like hand stuffing boxes in his garage.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. So him and I were for a while. And then out of nowhere, Molly came over and she interrupted the conversation I was in, and she was like, "Hey, you got to meet her. This is Amanda. She loves to travel. She volunteers a lot, and she used to live in Asia somewhere. And Amanda, this is Jairek. He loves to volunteer. He travels a lot, and he used to live in Africa somewhere. Anyways, you two have fun," and walked away. And I looked at her. I was like, "Okay, hi." And she said, "Hi." And I'm like, "So you travel? Like, where have you been?" And in my experience, I grew up right around there. I grew up in North County. And so most people I had run into and talked about traveling, there's kind of a circle, maybe like San Francisco, Vegas, Tahoe, lots of Tijuana and Baja, maybe Hawaii every now and then. Like, they don't go far. That's kind of the radius of travel. If they're fancy, they go to Colorado. Like, there's a radius California sticks to, specifically Southern California.
To be
And
fair, it's a really beautiful state, so I
it's
understand why they
amazing.
don't
It's
go
like
far.
paradise. You don't have to go
Yeah.
anywhere because everything's here.
We have everything
Right.
here.
Yeah.
But it was that thought. So I'm used to like, oh, you travel, and they're like Vegas. I'm like, how exciting. It doesn't. It's like, oh, that's neat. But I was like, oh, you travel. Where do you travel to? And she's like, well, I went to Chulalongkorn in Thailand, which is like their super fancy business school. And then I was interning in China for a while. And then I was living in Bali for a little bit. And then I was backpacking all over Asia. And I was like, oh, shit, you've actually traveled. Wow, that's crazy. And I was like, well, what were you doing? And she's sharing all this stuff. And she's like, oh, what about you? Expecting maybe the same story. And I was like, oh, yeah, I lived on a cruise ship for 100 days and took a tour. We did 10 countries in 100 days around the world. Then I went back and lived in a village in Uganda teaching organic farming for a while.
Wow.
And she was like, oh, shit, that's amazing. And so we ended up talking for like 4.5 hours at this party, just standing there chatting with each other in our own little bubble. And what's amazing is after about 4 hours, I remember I felt hungry. And I was like, shoot, if I feel hungry, she's probably hungry. And I was like, are you hungry? Do you want to go get tacos? She's like, sure. And someone told me a long time ago, never go on a first date by yourself because you won't act like yourself. And I went, that's really interesting. And so my friend Alex had wandered over and he's always hungry. So I just pushed him. I'm like, you want to go get tacos? He's like, yeah. And so the three of us left to go get tacos. And I remember I called that our first date, and she was like, that was not our first date. It wasn't just us. And I was like, it's definitely the first date. And my friend Alex had this app where you could put a mustache on people. And he's like, here's the real test. And he looked at her, he's like, hey, look at me, and took a picture of her.
Stop it.
And he took this picture, put a mustache on her, and he said, this is the first day we met. I don't know if
We have
you can see
documentation.
Stop it. Let me see this. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Hopefully people watching this are going to go to the YouTube channel or watch the video version of this so you can see this amazing picture of Amanda in a mustache where she still looks divinely beautiful somehow.
And that was the key. He said,
Thank
he
you.
looked at me, he's like, Jay, do you still think she's cute? And I looked at her, I'm like, she is kind of cute with a mustache. And he's like, okay, maybe she has a chance then.
That's
And I was
amazing.
like, hey, if she's cute in a mustache, there's potential there.
Yes.
And so that was a picture from the very first day we met. And I said our
Wow.
first date, which she'll contend and say our first date wasn't until we were alone on a sailboat.
No, it was so smart though. He was dating me in a group setting, which is a place where you truly get to see someone in a more natural setting instead of what feels like an interview. So it was absolutely brilliant. He was brilliant with it. I was just like, is this guy ever going to ask me out on a date? And then, yeah, I celebrated like our first official date. Like, that wasn't our first date.
Yes.
We've already been on a couple dates. So it was pretty brilliant, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how we met. And we've
That's
been
amazing.
together ever since. It's been pretty amazing.
So did you guys
My
both
favorite
know
part
right
was
when you
after
met,
that,
like
she called her girlfriend to tell her. After that, she called her girlfriend to tell her. She said, "Hey, I met the one."
wow. That was my next
And she
question.
said,
You took the words out of my mouth. I was like,
don't know if
did
he
you both
knows
know right
I'm the
away?
one. He'll have to figure that out on his own.
Wow. So you knew Amanda right away. Jairek, did you know? Did you feel the same way? I mean, you probably didn't call a girlfriend or a guy friend and say, because I feel like that's more of a girl thing to do, but did you know right away as well?
Someone asked me this. Scott, my neighbor, who they introduced us. He actually asked me, "When was the moment you knew?" And there was a moment that felt incredibly right to me. And I remember it was actually in that first, I didn't think of it at this moment, but looking back, it was a moment of alignment. And I remember we had talked about travel. And one thing Amanda asked was, where are you going next? And I said, oh, I'm taking a group of people. We're going to do 25 days in 10 countries through Central and South America. And her response was, I'm in.
That's
and
amazing.
To me, I had different friends. I mean, people I'd pursued or just straight friends, like guy friends, girlfriends, where I'd been like, hey, do you want to go on this trip? And the more often than not response I would get is, when are the dates? Let me think about it. Let me check and see. Send me some info. Like, everyone has something they use as a buffer.
Yeah.
To say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And her just straight response was, I'm in.
Wow. How far
That
into
fit?
the dating did that happen?
Oh, that was the very
That's
first
the
4-hour
first time we
conversation.
met.
Oh, so you guys both knew that first conversation then.
Well, I didn't. Looking back,
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
something.
That
At
was
the
the moment.
time, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that. Looking
And the
back, I was
mustache
like,
picture. Both of those
yeah, the
together.
mustache picture
That
was
was
the
it.
key for me. But the piece looking back was that was really, really important to me. The ability for someone to align on something and say, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And not need all the details, not need all the
Exactly.
information, not need to mull it over for 12 weeks, not need
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, but just to be like, yeah, let's go. We'll figure it out, was a really important quality for me.
So cool. Okay, so
That's so beautiful. So
it is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my God.
full disclaimer, I want to
Yes.
add in there because in hearing him saying it, which I've heard this story so many times, but there are a couple things I would say for those that are listening. I wouldn't just say yes to anyone. Like I had been traveling by myself for a while, so
Yeah.
I would just jump in with anyone. And South America, conveniently, Central and South America were next on my list. So that was that. But I was like, this is great. He's going there. I want to go. He already has it planned. Excellent. And it
Yeah.
wasn't just him, it was a retreat he was leading, right? So
Yeah.
for anyone
Yeah.
that's like considering that, I wouldn't just go with a random, totally solo. Anyway, so, and then the other thing, but I did love that we both kind of like poked a little bit. Like, do you really travel? Do you really give back? These are really high values of ours. And that is something that before Jairek, I was one of those women that, like, if a guy made me laugh, I was like, he's just cuter. I don't know. And so it was easy to kind of think that that was like such a low standard. And it's a great thing to have someone that can make you laugh.
Yeah.
But I realized that that wasn't in so many ways, like other people weren't fulfilling like my, or didn't align with, not fulfilling, but didn't align with my highest values. Whereas with Jairek and our first conversation, which is why I also realized, and this is also important because anyone that might know him or know of his family, I had no idea who he was or like his dad or anything like that. So I think that's important to say too, because it would be easy to be like, oh, of course you know he was someone.
Hold on,
And that actually,
there was a funny piece here. She at some point in the conversation of like, so like, what do you do? At some point snuck into the conversation. I was like, well, I'm kind of a motivational speaker. And her response without thought or question was, me too. I just don't get paid for it.
That's amazing.
Okay.
maybe he was in sales or something doing all that
Yeah.
traveling. And I was like, motivational speaking, what? I do that, except I don't get paid for it. I need to start charging. Anyway, so yeah, when that was another thing too, like our conversation that lasted for so many hours. And after like truly like spending the whole day, I realized that he, not knowing really anything about him, just in our conversation and really poking, like he aligned his values. And you can tell someone's values by looking at three things. Where do they spend their money? Where do they spend their time? Look at their calendar and then look at their environment. So by that, I could tell what he really valued. And so travel was super high on his list. Giving back was super high on his list. Serving people and humanity. And those are things that are so near and dear to my heart. They're my highest values. And then with that, in love and relationships, I'm like, here's this boy from SoCal. I know your divorce rate over here. I'm from Michigan. And like, and I don't know the stats of Michigan, but I know the stereotype of Southern California. And I, again, love the place. Like my heart is still there in so many ways. And I really value my Midwestern roots. So it is like, you're in it. Like there's no divorce in my family. Thank God. Like they've all managed to figure out how to stay true and loyal and devoted to their relationships and really serve them at a high level. And so, and family's important and love. And I'm so grateful for that. And so that was something that I remember really like in another conversation, really, where are you on with marriage and family and love, and what's that mean to you, and what's that look like to you for long term? And like really, and that's I wouldn't say an advanced conversation, but like for some guys that could kind of scare them off. And I was like, listen,
absolutely.
I want to figure this out sooner than later. Because I got smarter about that. It wasn't just about being funny. And prior to meeting Jairek, I was in this In the Midwest, we drive everywhere. So we had drove from, we don't, it's crazy. We'll drive 24 hours instead of taking a flight. It's bananas. It doesn't make sense. But so we're driving from Chicago back to Detroit, Michigan with my best friend. And we're talking about, she was in a significant relationship already. And I was talking about my like vision, without calling it manifesting. Essentially I was, but like, then it was just like, here's what he's doing. And here's what he's like, here's what he stands for. And here's what, not knowing Jairek, this is just like the man of my dreams. And what's so beautiful is like 2 weeks or so later, it was not long after, there's Jairek. And we're having this conversation. And I'm like, what? You are that package I was talking about. You stand for the things I dreamed. Like I dreamed of a man standing for. You're doing the things, and so many things just like clicked and like check the boxes, so to speak, or it was beautiful. And so with that kind of, I knew the first time I met him, it had nothing to do with like what I think some people think it would, just like the surface stuff, right? It was so much deeper than that and so much more. It was just the alignment of our values and what he really stood for. And so it was easy to make that call and say, I met the one, and I need you to know this because you're going to be my maid of honor. She's like, who are you dating? And I was like, I'm not like, I actually met him, and I'm not like nuts like that. It was just like, here's what I knew that was true. I'm not going to tell him that. We need to still like, he needs to know that I'm the one. And I also need it. Like, is he really who he says he is? Like based on what we've talked about, he is. And so what's beautiful was that it also allowed this. I think that some women in that stage, I was probably 26 or 28, I forget, when I met him, and some people kind of like hold on, like they're just like, claws in, he's mine. I want him. And I was like, what's so beautiful about this is that at least I know he exists. So if he doesn't realize or decide that I'm the one for him, at least I know this archetype of a man and what he stands for exists, so that I'm not just like in my head and dreaming. I've seen it. And like, and then it's about finding the right match. And I think that like that energy created such a beautiful space for things to just unfold very organically, where it was like, it was great. Right? There was no attachment. There was no pressure.
And that's what kills it. That's what typically kills it, is the attachment.
For sure. Yeah.
And on both ends, I've been in that experience where, you're getting to know somebody, it seems magical, but then you feel their anxiety and their attachment. And for me, I'm like, this is terrifying, because it is this like this expectation, this attachment, and that can kill things more than anything else, I think. So it's exactly what you said, like acknowledging, appreciating the beauty of what you're seeing and experiencing. If nothing else, just to know and validate that its existence is there, and then and then being open to what unfolds, what the plan is. So that's so beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. What a cool story. Okay. So I wanted to ask, a couple years ago, we used to do this thing every Friday night with a group of my friends. We had like what we called family dinner, and we'd all get together, which typically meant like they'd invite anyone they wanted. I'd show up with a bunch of groceries, and, they'd be like, there are 20 people coming or 25 people coming, whatever it is. And I'd be like, okay, cool. You two, you guys cut these, you guys dice those, and I'd put everyone to work in the kitchen. And by the end of the night, we'd have like made this beautiful dinner together. And it was always so wonderful. But oftentimes I was cooking with strangers that my friends were inviting. And this one time, this couple was there, who I assumed was a couple, sitting at the little bar, and they were, sitting there. So I was like, okay, you guys peel these, 30 yams. And so I handed them off the yams, and they're peeling and dicing. I'm busy in the kitchen, but every few minutes I look over and I see them, and they're probably in their like 60s. And they're like flirty and cute and laughing and giggling together. And I'm thinking it's Encinitas. So I'm like, oh, I see they're wearing wedding rings. I'm like, are they married to each other? Are they married to somebody else? Are they newlyweds? Like, not to talk bad about Encinitas. I love Encinitas. But like, I was like, there's like, they're too cute and happy. Like, oh, maybe they're like, it's their second marriage or their third, you know what I mean? Like you start thinking all these thoughts. I'm a little bit of a cynic because I haven't been lucky in love up to this point. And so I'm like, having all these stories about it. And then at some point I finally am like, okay, I'm just going to ask them. So are you two married? And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, how long you been married? They're expecting like, oh, we just got married last year, and they were like, oh, 40 years. And I was like, 40 years? Like what? Wait a minute. Like you guys are so cute and happy and flirty, and like how, like what is the secret to success? And they both had different advice, which I thought was really valuable. the advice that the man gave me was that you have to find someone that's willing to grow with you. And he said, if you don't find someone who's willing to grow with you, if you're watching this versus listening to this, you'll see my hands are like doing this like teeter-totter thing. But, it's like you outgrow the person. And it's like that's not, you become a different person. And now you're married to somebody that didn't grow with you. And there's not alignment anymore. You outgrow them. And so you have to find somebody who's willing to grow with you. And then her advice, which startled me at first, she said, you have to be willing to divorce and then remarry. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And she said, you have to be willing to like divorce the relationship that you had and recommit to the relationship that you have. And she said, what I mean by that is like when we met, we were like young, free hippies, traveling and going to music festivals and doing all this stuff. And then I got pregnant and life had to change. Like we had to change. And if we held on to this free, loving, hippie world that we had, it would have robbed us of what we now had, which was like this growing family. And then again, when our kids grew up and went off to college, we had to divorce that partnership that we had and like say goodbye, make peace with that, and then recommit to this new version of us without kids, empty nesters, finding ourselves at this stage in life. And so we had to be willing to like let go of what we once had to appreciate what we now have. And I thought that was such great advice. And so I guess I'm curious with you two, you guys are 10 years in now, right? So yeah, like what advice do you have in your experience of being together and being happy together? Because I see you guys thriving, working together, raising this family, moving abroad, all these things, as we've mentioned. Like what secrets to success do you have to share with us and with our audience about, relating to one another and being in a healthy, loving relationship long term?
I think so. When we first got married, we were engaged. We actually interviewed a bunch of couples who had been married for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and asked them what helped, what made a big difference. And we heard a lot of stuff. The most annoying comment I heard was, happy wife, happy life. Learn about this one, next beer, whatever you want.
It's not all that bad.
I mean, but you
also have to keep your husband happy though too. So
true, it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
But as a 28-year-old guy with raging testosterone, to just say the secret to life is roll over and give up is like death. Are you shitting me? Like, no, that's
like what?
Horrible. Like, don't have an opinion. Don't believe in anything. Don't stand up for what's right. Like, give up.
I think that actually causes problems in relationships. That idea, I think that actually causes a lot of problems because then the woman starts to fall out of love with what she fell in love with, right?
Well, the interesting part was
creates resentment.
I did research on this, and I actually found out that generally speaking, for a natural, healthy man, the older he gets, the more his testosterone drops.
Okay.
And so we were talking to couples in their 60s, 70s, sometimes 50s, but like people who were older. It would be natural for his testosterone to drop. And then we found out women after menopause, their testosterone levels naturally start to rise.
Wow.
And I was like, that actually makes sense. She's more driven, more assertive, stronger, a matriarch, someone who's now driving. He's more passive. He's more relaxed. He's less assertive. He's less in that state. And that's a chemical reaction. That's not a choice. Some people are okay with that. Some people aren't. So they do hormone replacement and all this other stuff to balance it how they like it. But naturally speaking, that's generally what happens for most healthy adults as we age. And I was like, that makes so much more sense to me. Cause I was like, what's it with all these weak old guys? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I think so extreme to say that though.
That's how I felt at 28. Okay. That's how I felt. That was rude.
Okay.
Now a little different opinion, but at 28, I was like, oh. And then they had other stuff. They were like, have a functional org chart of who's in charge of what. All these little tips they had given us. And I actually have a friend who studied relationships for 15 plus years. And what she found was there's four main reasons why couples actually get into a relationship. And so what's really interesting is to ask people when you meet them, what do you believe the purpose of a relationship is? Like, why even have one? What is the purpose behind it? And she said there's really 4 reasons you'll hear. One is companionship, to do things together. So go on a walk together, hang out together, learn together, read together, travel together, do everything together, build a business together, raise kids together, do everything together. Second is growth, meaning the purpose of being in a relationship is to grow. And it's like, well, that's interesting. Third is support, either the purpose, and it's some percentage. Like for me to support them in these ways and for them to support me in these ways. And it's some percentage of how often they're supporting and in which ways, and how often they're being supported and in which ways. And then the fourth one is legacy. And legacy, have you ever met a couple where you're like, I don't even think they like each other, like much less love each other, but I don't think they actually like each other. Like I don't think they like that human being. Why are they married?
Sadly, I've met a lot of those.
Yeah. And sometimes that's legacy. And legacy, she said, the easiest way to understand it, if you go all the way back in history, and it's like the princess of such and such country will be married to the prince of such and such country, so that the two countries are better off together. It's like they've never met each other. They don't know who each other are. They get to meet each other. They don't even like each other, but they're married so that the two countries have a better chance at survival in future.
A marriage of convenience, right? It's like it's for the betterment of the whole, or of the
convenience,
families.
Sacrifice, or feeling like you have to, like you're pushed into it, and it's either do that or die kind of concept back then. You don't have a choice. What's interesting is when these cross over. So luckily, Amanda and I are both companionship and then support. Her muscles of support and supporting me are way stronger than my muscles of supporting her in the way she wants to be supported.
Okay.
And so I've had to grow.
That was
over the
honest.
Years. I love it's that. Very honest. And so I've had to grow over the years of going, here's how I would have liked to support. She appreciates that, but the support she really needs might be a little different. So I'm going to need to grow in that area and become a little stronger in things I wouldn't normally have done, or it's not natural to me. It's not just the way I naturally would have thought about it. So I have to gain some muscle, which is great. I also love to grow. I had a couple I was coaching who lived in Singapore. He was companionship and she was legacy.
Okay.
And they had been married for many years. Their kids were getting ready to go to school, so they sent the kids off. They're empty nesters now. And he said, wonderful, now we get to spend so much time together. And she said, I booked a yoga retreat for 15 days in Bali. And he goes, great, when are we leaving? And she said, we? No, I'm going. You stay here.
Wow. Yeah,
and he was crushed because he wanted nothing more than to do everything together with this human. And she was like, hey, I'm legacy. The kids are good. We did our role. I don't need to see you anymore. I'm going to go do something fun.
Wow.
And this
how do you coach that?
Well, his question is like, is it over?
Yeah.
Like that's all she wanted was kids having a good life and now she's done with me?
Wow.
I said, it doesn't have to be. Once you know you have different styles, it becomes a choice to say, hey, am I willing to lean in on their style?
Yeah.
Like I found out the way Amanda wants to be supported is different than what I would have naturally done. Am I willing to lean in on her style and gain some new muscles? And if your partner is willing to, there's a beautiful future ahead of you. If someone's stubborn and is like, no, that's not the reason we're together, there might be some bumps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Better to find that out in advance than it is, right? I always say it's easier from experience. I say this, it's easier to not get into a relationship than it is to get out of a relationship. It's so much harder. There's so much heartbreak versus like, oh, wow, I see there's not alignment here. I see that we want different things. I'm whatever it is, support, companionship, and your legacy. This isn't aligned. This isn't what I'm looking for. So have a great life. On to the next, versus like getting into it and then, years later having to go through the heartache of losing that relationship. Amanda, I think you were going to add something to that.
I love everything that Jairek just shared. And going back to, is the relationship a priority? And are we keeping it a priority, right? And that really goes back to values. One thing that Jairek and I have done a few times now, as needed, we go back to when things just feel off. Maybe we're out of sync. We go back to where we started, which are what are our individual values? What is most important to us in life at this moment? And then we do that by ourselves, and then we come together. And typically what you'll see is the values are mostly the same, but they may have changed the order, right? So in becoming parents, it adjusted the order for us, right? All of a sudden, family shot up for me. And for him, I think business, no, I forget, but there was something else. They just changed. And what's so beautiful is there's no judgment here. There's no judgment at all. It's completely open, like, come as you are. I'm going to love you as you are. And we show up there, and then we share our values, and then we write them as a couple, right?
Wow.
And so now that we have this third pillar, because it's not me versus you, and this is what's important to me, and this is what's, vice versa. But it's like, okay, now let's write our values for our relationship. And this is our unifying point of, so when, shit hits the fan, like, our most important values are love. Like, I would say health is always number one for
Of
us.
course.
We cannot love the other or ourselves the way we need to be there for each other if we're not prioritizing our health. So health is always up there for us. And honestly, it's probably 1 and 2 is health, and they're really always at the top, right? And so
Absolutely.
love is always up there. And then what's beautiful is you write them for your relationship, but then you're still able to see and honor and respect and appreciate the unique values of each other. And then with that, it is about, again, like, if love is the number one, if that's our pillar, right, that unifies us, then what would love do when Jairek needs something in this moment, right? What would love do if Amanda is feeling overwhelmed in this moment and she needs some more support, even though it's not his strength, like he said before, and I may be the better supporter in, like, just whatever ways. What would love do is the answer, instead of, well, this is what I want, or this is what I want. It's like, hey, our top value is love, right? And growth is important. So through these seasons, right, these chapters of our life, having a new kid, welcoming, having a child.
We'll put that on instant replay for him at some stage.
Anyway, not the old one, but the new one. Anyway, so becoming parents, we had to revisit that, right? And so, and there was a season even before parents. It was just like, oh, change is about to happen, and doing it. And then things got funky as, I'm in postpartum and we're readjusting to this new life, family of 3. We revisit it time and time again, and it always brings us back home to each other in our relationship. And it is, I would say, one of the best practices that we have that just keeps us in alignment with each other, right? Another thing that we do that makes a huge difference in our relationship is we do focus on growth. So we're always wanting to be the best versions of ourselves, not only for ourselves, but also each other and those that we support, right, and serve. But with that, it means becoming a better communicator and learning techniques to communicate, because at our worst, our animal brain takes over, and now we're just, fight or flight. And that is not where you want to be in a relationship. That's not a thriving relationship. That's survival. And we go through those through life. Postpartum is kind of that, right? A lot of us can relate to that. And so one thing that I'm really proud of, especially Jairek, like, we both love to learn, but this man, like, gobbles up books a week, I swear. And so he found tools from Gottman and imago therapy, and he brought them to our relationship. And it's been such a game changer, and if, in that way, we always have something to fall back on when the communication isn't, as, even as coaches, we're still human. And so we forget our tools, our best thing in that moment. We still have these frameworks to fall back on that allows us to better communicate one. And if we slip and we miss that tool, and we're kind of like, not being, the most kind or loving we could be in that moment, then still we have tools to repair. And that's something that also, I would say, is a super power of ours, is the ability to repair. And I get that compliment from very close friends of ours. I'll share what we're going through, and then, like, within the same day or within 24 hours, we've repaired, we're good, we're in love, like, back to newlywed status or whatever.
That's amazing.
It's huge. But what's that? How do you do that? Why is that hard for some people and easier for others? And it comes to a dedication, a devotion to this. Is our relationship is the most important thing. Many times when it got tough with us running a business together, I'd be like, forget this business. I married you. And so you are the most important thing, our relationship. So if we're going to have friction in our business, it's not worth it. I quit.
Amen
So
to that.
we learned, And then with that,
Priorities.
our egos are out, our that flight or flight response. We've learned how to like self-soothe and calm our nervous system to get back to a place of peace, of groundedness, of love, and
Beautiful.
then speak to each other, right?
Yeah.
It's been a
Isn't
really
it, isn't
beautiful
it, you
thing.
mentioned the Gottman Institute. Isn't that aren't they the ones that did the study where they could tell with like
Yes,
almost 90% accuracy if a couple would be together in 5 years based on, they'd like give them a hot topic that was a hot subject in their relationship and they'd leave
Yep.
them alone
yes,
for like 5 minutes. And based on how much respect they were able to maintain for each other within that argument, they could tell with like almost 90% accuracy whether or not they'd be together in 5 years. And like,
you nailed it. Yeah.
that's
One of
so
the
And that
wild.
is based on, and there's so many, there's factors there, but one of the most telling was the ratio of positive to negative feedback. What's
Wow.
interesting is is it 1 to 5 or I think it's 1 to 5. Once you have a kid, it's 1 to 20, one negative to 20 positive. Because, and if you think about
Wow.
it, as a parent, like you're under so much stress and pressure of raising these little ones that your conversations don't have as much space to have
Mhm.
like a productive and loving conversation because you're stressed or you're sleep deprived
Yeah.
or you're hangry or your toddler's hangry. And
Or they're
so,
climbing on you and they want attention and you can't have you. There's no space to even talk about the thing you need to talk about.
yeah,
Yes.
you're like, mom, 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 mom. You're like, that's so
Uh-huh.
funny because dad is right there. Yeah.
Yes.
But so it's 1 to 20, right? And Jarek, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on those ratios. I know he's so much better with the stats and facts.
So more negative than positive, and it falls apart.
Wow.
Equal positive to negative 1 to 1, it falls apart. 3 positive to every 1 negative, and it's stable.
Mm,
6 to 1, it's growing, except
wow.
they're under stress, and then it's
Yeah.
12 to 1.
Can you help us understand that when you say positive to negative, is that like in the midst of conflict or is that in general? Like I have
In
6
general.
positives for every negative that I have for the relationship.
So here's what's interesting. It's every look, interaction, communication.
Wow.
So you got to
Wow.
think eyebrows, text,
Tone.
emails, tone,
Wow.
the way you stand, how you're physically communicating with the other person. All of those are giving positive or negative signals to the other human.
Okay, so question on that. Is it the
One of
chicken
the
or the
so
egg?
hold on one sec. This is one of the ones that threw me
Okay.
off. The most dangerous of the things is contempt. Number one reason for
Oof.
divorce is contempt. Contempt, if I had to learn this, because there was this look my dad used to use as a kid that was kind of fun. When he's teasing you, he'd go, like, he'd give you this, like he's questioning you with his face.
Uh-huh.
I always saw that as like my dad having fun with me.
Yeah.
When I learned what the facial expression of contempt is, that is the facial expression of contempt. It's questioning the other person with your face.
Wow.
And I was like, oh shit, I need to rewire that. Because I
Yeah.
think that's a fun, playful questioning of like, really? Really? That's
Really?
contempt.
Yeah.
That's actually showing the person I'm not listening or trusting what they're saying.
Wow.
And I was like, woo, my face is very loud. Amanda's always
Yeah.
jokes. She's like, my face will have the whole conversation with you if you're talking to me and I don't have to say a word, which is very
Yeah.
true. So both of us are overly expressive
Me
in
too.
our gestures and face
Yeah.
and body movement.
Even
And so
energy. I walk in a room and people already know what's going on. Just like my energy introduces me before I do.
remembering how important that is, and you got to keep that. And so one of the little secrets I figured out a long time ago was, if you know how to win a game, why risk it? Put the
Yeah.
odds
That's
in
right.
your favor if you can.
Yeah.
And so
That comes
something
back to, is your relationship the priority? You know, do
Yes.
I want to be right or do I want to, what is that saying? Like, do you want to,
Be in
do you want to
love.
be, do you want to say what you want or do you want to get what you want?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that saying? I love it. Say what you want or get what you want. It's like, well, if I want to be in a happy relationship, right? That's what I want. So it's like, I can say this thing right now, but that might not actually lead me to getting what I want. Maybe I need to like think about this and reframe how I'm coming at this so that we can get what we want together as a couple. But I want to go back to that question, chicken or the egg, because when you say this, like the positive to negative ratio and the contempt and all this stuff, right? It's like, are these things like the symptoms of a disease that's already present, right? Is that something that like, okay, well, the disease, it's diseased, it's there, like can it be healed? Or is it like those things are there because the relationship is like, like when you're at like a 1-to-1 ratio or even like a more negative to positive ratio, is it like, is the relationship too far gone? Or is that just like, hey, this is where we're at and we can reframe the way that we're talking to each other and looking at each other and we can fix this, like,
more than reframe, don't wait to the end of the day to find out how you did. Take the beginning of the day and make it the way you want it. And so one of the things I figured out was, well, wait a second. If I'm going to wait till 8 tonight and tally up how did we do and find out, oh shit, we lost today.
Yeah.
I'm playing to lose. And so I'm competitive. My wife's competitive. I'm like, let's play this game to win.
I love that.
Win, that means first thing in the morning when we go take a walk, let's start our day with 150 to 0. Positive to negative. How do we do that? Let's take a walk together and talk about everything we appreciate about each other, everything we love about each other, everything we honor about each other, everything we're excited about for each other. Let's talk about everything we're grateful for. Let's talk about everything we're proud of. Let's flood that into the day so that by the moment the day starts, we're at 150 to 0.
Beautiful.
Now, is shit naturally going to happen? Yeah.
It's life.
It's going to carve off 12 at a time. And throughout the day, we're going to keep piling more on. But let's tilt the odds in our favor. Like, let's cheat to win the game of love. Like, why are we going to sit around and wait till the end of the day to find out, it didn't work. We got our ass kicked. No thanks.
Let's stack it now.
Like, if we're going to play to win, let's stack a massive amount in our favor from the start of when we can and allow that to offset the ratio in our favor for the rest of the day. Same thing with the week. One of my favorite things we do, Amanda said, if you want to know someone's values, look at their calendar. From 9 a.m. till noon on Mondays, that's our date. Like if I'm going to wake up, become my best self, work out, get my mind, body, emotion, hit the sauna, hit the ice plunge, do my morning routine, do all my breath work, visualize, do my affirmations. If I'm going to do this and I'm the best version of myself, why am I going to give that to work? That's not what's most important to me. If I'm the best version of myself to start the week, I'm giving it to the person who's most important to me.
I love that. That's amazing. I want to be respectful of your time because I know that you guys have a hard stop. But before I let you go, I want to say you guys are doing exactly what I'm learning about in your book, which is like, learn it, live it, give it. And so I so appreciate that because it's helpful for me, somebody who, aspires to have a beautiful relationship at some point in my life and having examples to look up to and learn like what are the keys to success there. So thank you for sharing all of that. If people want to connect with you further, how do they find you? How do they follow you? How can they connect more with your work? I know you guys have the Performance Coach Academy. Talk a little bit on that before we let you guys go.
Sure. Easiest way is usually just go to our website, JarekRobbins.com. It's not Jairek and AmandaRobbins.com. Just I had it up before we met.
But they follow you on Instagram. You're always sharing brilliant content.
Follow us on Instagram. It's at Peace, Love, and Gummy Worms.
Literally, that's how I know you because it's for years. That's the name I see. So it's like, wait, it's Amanda, right? Like, because I know you as Peace, Love, and Gummy Worms.
Yeah, it's funny how people get called by their handles. But yeah, and I've tried to change it a few times. I did it just to remind myself not to take social media too seriously.
Yes.
And I've tried to get out of it, and everyone's like, "Don't change it." And I'm like,
I know. Yeah.
But follow Jairek at Jairek Robbins.
Meetings with that we walk in and they're like, "Oh, Gummy Worms is here."
Yeah.
She's like, "Okay."
So good. Hey, but it brings a little bit of fun and lightness to it all, right? We don't need to take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
It does. Go to our main website. People interested in becoming a coach, you can find it right on our main website or performancecoachuniversity.com/apply.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for being here. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. There's so many more directions I want to go. I know you had a hard stop, so we'll let you guys go now, but I definitely would love to get you back on here a little bit down the road.
Awesome.
And,
thanks for having me.
I will follow up with you for an address to send you a goodie package from Choice.
I'm so excited. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support this show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha Mickeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at the Choice Juicery Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.